It's important because it's got all the, if you want chickens, that'll tell you in there. If your HOA will let you have chickens or a llama in your backyard or an
I want a
RV,
llama.
right?
What's up, guys? That's just a short little snippet of an interview I did with Sarah.Zocolo of Security Title. We went over title and escrow issues, what are the most common things to look for, and there's some really good info. With that, we'll just jump right into it. What's up, guys? Mike Holt here. I am with Sarah.Zocolo, an escrow manager here with Security Title. We're going to talk about some escrow issues, some title issues, but thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So just to start off, what do you do and who are you?
So, Sarah.Zocolo, I'm an escrow manager at Security Title. I've been here since July of last year, but I've been in escrow almost 3 years.
Okay.
Been in real estate almost 8.
Wow.
So before I got into escrow, I was actually a transaction coordinator for about 40 agents at a brokerage.
Okay.
Did about 100 transactions a month doing that. The brokerage was melding into another different brokerage, and at the time it just kind of worked out to get into escrow. I like the paperwork side of it, the research side of it, and
you like the admin side of things?
Yeah, I like it. I like being able to. Escrow's kind of like the quarterback of the whole transaction since I'm talking to everybody. So I like being able to make sure that everything's going well and everyone's doing a good job.
Like, keep all the deadlines.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
track and okay, I need this paper to work.
TCs have some control, transaction coordinators do, but I feel like the escrow officer was the one that was really making sure everything's going right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what would you say like are common kind of questions or like things that people don't think about when it comes to the escrow process for the buyers and sellers?
Yeah, so more on the buyer and seller side, I think for buyers, a good thing to always remember is that your earnest money, the first thing that you deposit, those funds, we actually pull out of your account in Arizona. So I know in other states the check is held, but it's not actually cash. Where in Arizona, we have to cash the check. So that money does get deposited, does get pulled from their account. So be prepared for that. Another common question, the most common question that I get is when do I sign? Which obviously every transaction is a little bit different, but for sellers, the way that I like to do it is at least 10 days, 10 business days before their close of escrow. We like to already have everything in and get their stuff signed. For buyers, I like to always coach them at the beginning when I first do that call about just intro and earnest money of be flexible for when you're going to sign, because with buyers, especially if you have a lender, we can't get you signed until we have the loan docs with your lender. So we work hard to get that as soon as possible. But some days it could be 3 days before, sometimes it could be a week before, sometimes it could be the morning of closing.
Really?
So just be ready to be flexible. I always recommend if the buyers can take the closing day off of work to try and do that, just to take a little bit of stress off of.
Do you recommend that for specifically the closing date or for the signing date?
It depends. Again, each transaction, each situation's different. If you're an out-of-state buyer or you're not going to be in town close to your closing, we'll have to get you signed at least the day beforehand so we can get the originals FedExed overnighted back to us. So if you're out of state, plan on taking at least maybe the day before closing off or, the couple days before. And usually we'll get a good idea of when you're going to close or when we're going to get the docs about a week beforehand when we work with the lender.
And you mentioned for the sellers, you try to do it like 10 days out.
Yeah, the reason being, it's just kind of a personal preference of mine to get the sellers done as soon as possible. There's not as much on the seller side that they need to do. If there's an HOA, once we get that ordered and the information back from the HOA company, and then if they have a current mortgage, we get their payoff info and stuff. Those are kind of the two main things for sellers.
So if anything like changes, like a random concession that comes through or price change, would that adjust that at all?
So we would adjust it. The nice thing is that the way that we work in Arizona is the numbers that they sign on are all estimated until we actually record, close, disperse all the money. So that's kind of the nice thing. And I do get that question a lot when I call the sellers so early. They're like, oh, well, what if something changes? I go, well, if you want to wait till it changes or you want to wait till a closer time, of course, that's fine. But why not just get it done now? So if you're packing and moving and you've got to do like those last minute repairs and stuff and change the outlet covers and things like that, you have time and my part's off their plate. And a lot of people appreciate that.
Okay, so if something does change, they don't need to go back and re-sign?
So they don't need to come back and re-sign.
Okay.
We'll usually just send an updated settlement statement with those changes, and I'll let them know, like, You don't have to re-sign it, but just for your info, this is your new bottom line.
Gotcha.
But a lot of people like, obviously, as early as possible for the seller side because they're packing, they're cleaning, they're doing repairs, all that kind of stuff.
They're like, oh no.
Yeah,
I got
exactly.
enough on my
So
plate
I'm
right
like,
now.
I'm just over here, so if I could just get my stuff off your plate, then you guys can just keep moving forward.
Gotcha. So what are kind of one of the big questions that I have as an agent is we see a lot of times that on the sell side that we have an hold open policy for listings.
Sure.
What is the benefit of that for both the seller and the buyer going into a listing?
So the benefit of a hold open policy, a hold open is we do the pre-title work for you guys. So say you get the listing, you and the seller sign an agreement saying you're going to help sell the home together.
Yep.
And you send me the seller's name and the property info. I can run title already before you even have a buyer and make sure that everything's
Nice
clean and clear is usually the verbiage that you'll hear from the escrow officers. Like, everything's clean and clear. We're good to go. That helps a lot with sellers where maybe they're elderly, there was a divorce situation, someone's passed and there's probate or estate. And we've had it happen where there's liens on title, old credit cards, things like that the person who inherited the home didn't know about. And we now have time to get that taken care of while you go out and find the buyer.
Gotcha.
So we're kind of getting a jump ahead on any issues. So that way, once you go under contract, the second everyone's ready to close, we can close, and it's not a mad dash in 25 days to try and get stuff taken care of.
Definitely makes sense, and even now, like people trying to close sooner than that.
Exactly, yeah.
So, what would you say are some of the things that someone should look out for with a particular escrow officer or title company that they're working with?
I think communication is key. I know that sounds kind of obvious because obviously you'd want people to communicate with you, but something to keep in mind is that, like, for myself, obviously every I don't call them transactions, every client's purchase or sale is very important to them, but it's also important to me. So when someone calls, say I'm in the middle of closings that day and I have someone, we just opened escrow and they've got all these questions on their title report that we sent out, I'm going to stop and I'm going to go over everything with them. It's important to actually pick up the phone and get an answer and not just an email or voicemail all the time. And as you know, I have my cell phone number on my card even, and I will give that out at signings and stuff. So that way I let them know, like, hey, if you ever have any questions after closing, here's my cell, just shoot me a text or send me an email or whatever, and we'll follow up. And I know that that's hard sometimes for, I don't ever want people to feel like, you should never feel like the person that's working for you is too busy.
Yep.
And even though escrow is a neutral third party, technically, and I don't represent the seller or the buyer or the lender or the agents or anything, we're just kind of in the middle doing the financial and the title insurance stuff. They're still, your clients are my clients.
Yep.
That's why we have good relationships with the people that we work with, is because you have to treat everyone like humans, because it's their home, not mine. So
they're the ultimate client at the end of the day.
Exactly. And I want to make you look good, and I want to make your people feel good, and that way everyone actually enjoys the experience. Because a lot of times, especially through COVID, and even right now with how everything's going, a lot of people are stressed, and so they don't know. There's a lot of first-time home buyers, and just to take the time and go the extra mile, it's something that you should look for. Is your escrow officer willing to do signings in person, which I prefer to do, as you know. I'm always like, why don't you come in? Are you sure you can't come in? I'd love if you could come in.
So that kind of rolls really good into my next question is, what are the things that you try to do differently than the next escrow person out there?
Right. I think kind of it is a benefit from my previous, being a realtor and a transaction coordinator and working on the agent side, is I understand kind of where the thought process that you guys have is and what you're going through. And so I'll try and, what I like to do is obviously communicate, but I have a lot of templated things, so that way when things go out, there's bullet points. When the title report goes out, there's just a brief explanation, and then it's attached so they can look through it if they want. I always give out, my cell phone or my direct line. I have no problem with that. And I understand that my office hours are 8 to 5 because we mostly work in banking hours, but contracts are written at 8 p.m., 1 a.m., things like that. I was on the phone with the seller at 2 a.m. a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it was, just something crazy, and they were going through a tough divorce and some court papers got filed and he forgot to tell me, and he was signing the next day right before he left the country.
Oh, wow.
So getting up a little extra early the next day to refigure some documents and get those back over to him and stuff. And
Makes sense. And because I want to shout you out, because one of the deals that we did earlier this year, you went through like the title report ahead of time, which in my experience, not everyone, it seems like, proactively goes through that stuff to get extra eyes on it. But you were able to see that the house had a solar lien on it. And I don't know if you ended up calling the solar company or not, but like you found out that we couldn't transfer the solar, and you gave me that information so we could get that figured out way ahead of time.
Exactly. That's what I like to do, and my assistant is trained the same way if I'm ever not in the office, is that we front load everything. And I when I do my initial call to your seller and your buyer and introduce myself and explain who I am, because a random person's not going to go like, oh, you're my escrow officer, you know. But so I'm like, I'm the money person and I'm the signing person, and so I'm either taking money from you or giving money to you. So I'm the good guy. You have to be nice to me, but
be nice to me at all times.
Yeah, but I tell him, I'm like, it's going to seem a little overwhelming the first week because I'm going to be sending you HOA emails. I'm going to be sending you the title report, and if there's any problems, I'm going to send you separate emails to handle up all that kind of stuff. Because if we can get all that done, that's how I can get my sellers signed so ahead of time. That's how I can get the buyers ready to go, where now I'm bothering your lender to say, hey, I'm ready. We're 15 days out. Hey, we're 10 days out. Hey, we're 5 days out. You know, and again, all that's templated. And as you've seen with the deals we've done together, I like to do a happy closing day eve email, which is just, you know, because the day of closing, if you have both agents and you have the buyers and sellers and everyone feels like they're in the dark, that's a stressful day, and it's supposed to be super exciting. You're either moving on from your home or you're buying a new home and starting all this new journeys and stuff. So that's why I email the night before closing to say, here's exactly where we are. I have so-and-so's funds. We're waiting on this, or we're ready to go. We'll be closed by 9 a.m. Nice. You know.
Well, so for those ones that are kind of pushing the finish line really close, what I know here in Arizona, basically to get closed the day of, like if we get funded the same day, what does that timeline look at for like a buyer to wire over money to you guys?
Sure. So we do a lot of signed fund records is kind of the general term, where the buyers are signing the same day as closing. We get it back to the lender funds, and then we close and record everything up at the county to finish up. For that kind of stuff with the wires and everything, if we're getting to that point where it's going to be a quick close, it's going to be the same day kind of stuff, I'll talk to the lender first and be like, do you guys have pretty much figured out numbers 3 days ahead of time if I don't have docs yet? And we'll try and get an estimated number. I'm going to ask the buyer's agent, hey, this is kind of where we're at. We don't have docs at the moment. We're cutting it close. So preemptively, do you want to talk to your buyers, and we can have them oversend money and then refund the difference back to them. If they're not able to do that, I get money's tight and stuff like that, then usually what happens is they'll come in early to sign. I'll send them to their bank right after the signing, and they can get the wire set up. Wires take about a couple hours from bank to bank. Rule of thumb is, right now with daylight savings, it's a little bit different, but if a wire gets ordered before 2 p.m., it'll show up the same day. Okay. So that's the Federal Reserve cutoff kind of stuff.
Okay, and then I guess once you guys receive all the funds, what's
the process at that point?
Yeah.
So the process is, you know, the seller signs, the buyer signs, and then if there is a lender involved, I'll take the documents, send it back to the lender, to their closing team. They review it. If they need like an initial here or there, we fix it, and then they give us their final approval. And there's usually like a number attached to the final approval that attaches to the funding wire, which is the lender's funds that they send over to us. At that point, the moment I get the lender's money and I have the buyer's money, security title is nice because we work with the county through an e-recording system, so we don't actually need to courier originals up to the county office, which I know some companies do. A company I used to work at did that, and it was stressful because if I don't get everything in the courier run by 11 a.m., we're not going to close that day. Whereas here, I can wait, you know, till the last wires come in around 3 o'clock, and the second I get those funds, or the buyer brings a cashier's check, or however we do it, we can still record.
sense.
I can get stuff recorded all the way up to 4:45.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as long as I get it in line at the recording desk, then we're good to go, which is nice.
Yeah, that's really
I do
helpful.
take pride in being able to close a lot of my stuff before 2, so that's what I try and do. But
yeah, because like here in Arizona, we can't hand over keys until
it records. Exactly.
That's really big. Like if we can record earlier in the day, most people, if they are working, they're getting off at 5, 6 or whatever, and I can run over and give them keys right away.
Right, and that's another benefit of doing that day before email out to everyone, because I'll set expectations in that email of like, we are good to go, we'll be closed by 10 or 11 a.m. or we're still waiting on something from the lender or money from both people or whatever. We're going to close in the afternoon. Let your clients know, so that way you guys look good in setting expectations, and you're not doing a phone tag thing back and forth between your clients and me and everyone to be like what's going on? Hello, is anyone there today? Or
please, someone pick up. Yeah, makes sense. So what would you say are the most common questions from clients, like buyers and sellers, during the escrow process?
The most common questions for buyers is kind of, what is this? Do I need this? When I send them the title report or all the HOA disclosures, because I know per the HOA addendum, it's either the seller technically is responsible for delivering like your CCNRs, all the rules and regulations and fees of your HOA, but we order that and send it out on behalf of the seller. And it's important because it's got all the, if you want chickens, that'll tell you in there if your HOA will let you have chickens or a llama in your backyard or an RV, right? But, or even like an RV. Can you have a trailer over the, can you park in the driveway? That's why that kind of stuff is really important. And the title report, when they call or ask about it for the buyers, they're like, do I need this? I'm like, well, there's no issues usually, so no. But if there are, it's just a heads up to let you know that, hey, we're working on stuff with the seller on our end, and I'll let you know once, all that's good to go, because that is your insurance. That's your ownership to the property besides the deed
that makes sense
that we issue. So it is important.
So a couple of viewer questions we have here is, who's in charge of opening escrow?
Ideally the buyer's agent, because we'll need to deposit the earnest money first. That's technically when escrow opens, is once the earnest money is deposited per the contract. That's how it's written. So the buyer's agent preferably would open escrow, just because then they can get me the buyer's contact info. We can reach out to them. But if the listing agent sends it first, I can go on the contract, find the buyer's agent, and reach out to them anyways. So
when the buyer's agent does send over that initial email with the buyer's contact info, is it beneficial to also have the seller's contact info on it? I know, like, for the most time, the only person with that contact info is the listing agent.
Right.
But is it helpful for you guys to have it?
Of course. Because then, even if it's just the seller's names as you understand them, I have an idea of what's going on. It just kind of makes it easy to see it all there. And I guess another point that I'd like to make with opening escrow and things like that is, we don't know what agents or buyers and sellers don't tell us. I'll never see the house. I'll never go to it. I don't see the appraisal. I'm not driving by weirdly like, oh, I'm doing this house or this house, But so if there is solar and let me know, ahead of time, because not all solar companies actually record liens. Some do, some don't.
Yep.
So like what we dealt with yours, it was a different situation. If someone's passed, I've had it where the son had the exact same name as his dad, and they both happened to be widows before the dad had passed. So when I call him, it's, hello, so-and-so, and are you still a widow? Do you want to be called an unmarried man on the deed? Like, what's your preference? And then after that conversation, I find out, oh no, the person on title is not him.
Oh.
It's his dad. And luckily I have a great probate attorney, so we were able to close on time still. But if you don't communicate special things, if there's a divorce going on, or buyers, if they're in the middle of a divorce, their soon-to-be ex-spouse needs to sign a deed to say that they won't have ownership to the property. So there's a rule of thumb is just, I don't know what you don't tell me.
Yeah, I know I've had a situation recently where the sellers were former husband and wife. They got a divorce, and then but they were still both on the deed.
Yeah.
So trying to
happens
get
a
that
lot.
figured out.
Yeah, that's hard. That is a thing that we run into a lot. COVID definitely didn't help marriages from my
Everyone's
side of things that
locked in
I've seen.
together.
But yeah, there's a lot of times where one person wins a house in the divorce, but the attorneys don't actually draft up the deed during the divorce to get it signed. And I have no problem being that go-between. I've done it many times where the spouse I'm working with does not talk to this one but has their phone number, and we'll send out a courtesy notary to that person. They don't have to pay for it. They just need to sign. And we'll make sure that we protect, your clients that are going through that, so we get the right stuff and the right disclosures recorded for them correctly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what would be the best way for a realtor to leverage your services and kind of what you bring to the transaction and the deal?
Yeah, so on my end, opening pre-title, doing the hold opens is a great thing because it does give your seller, look, I'm working with my team, I'm working with my title company already, and we know that you're going to be good to go, so there's no surprises. Once you get the buyer, you just got to close at that point. That's great leverage, especially when you're doing listing appointments too. That's something to pull. We also have a marketing team. I have a marketing rep that I work with. Her name's Sherry Griffin. And she does great marketing. We have designers and everything, and you've used a lot of our stuff. So, so if you see his things, we help with it. But
Yep, definitely.
But there's a lot of ways that we can help. We do a lot of creative marketing. And if you just have a random idea, we're pretty good at putting it into action and making it a real thing for you.
Yeah, definitely shout out to their marketing team. Super helpful. So that kind of wraps up all the questions I had. Is there anything you want to kind of leave the folks here? Any lasting thoughts?
Yeah.
Tips and tricks?
Don't be afraid to call your escrow officer, and if they don't answer, hold them accountable. And same with your agents. If you have any questions, just give us a call or give me a call. And it's never a dumb question. It's never something that you should wait to ask later on. If you have a question, just ask it now, and if they can't get it answered at that moment, we'll answer as soon as we can.
Definitely. So, Sarah, thank you for your time
Thank you.
today.
It was fun.
Hope this was helpful for you guys. I will have her information in the description. So if you ever need a title person, definitely hit her up. She's awesome. Highly recommend. So if you need anything, just let me know. Other than that, have a good one, guys. Bye.